Alrighty, folks. New day, new brain, as I always say. And what will we do to start out with is some good old Anki. After that, what I'll do is we go ahead and review what I did yesterday off the cuff of my brain, my one last brain cell. And that will be that. So you already know, if you've been watching this series, you already know which one's coming up for Anki flashcard. If you don't, it's the one on the 14 core claims that the authors make. And that one's been a difficult one. Hopefully today it's faster. Other days it's been taking about like 10 minutes to get through these Ankis. So hopefully we're fast here. What are the 14 claims the authors make it stick? There's a direct relationship between effort and depth and effectiveness of learning. We're often poor judges of when we're learning or when we're not. Rereading and mass practice of a skill are by far among the most popular and intuitive techniques for learning across domains, yet they are both considered to be pretty ineffective according to the evidence. Retrieval practice is more effective than rereading and reviewing notes. Spacing and interleaving retrieval practice makes it more difficult, and it feels like it can be less productive, but in fact that effort is actually what makes it more effective, and that agitation effort. Six is attempting to solve a problem or do something, perform a skill, do something before learning it actually leads to more efficient and deeper learning once you do learn the skill, even with errors, and actually probably because of the errors you make. The idea that sticking with your preferred learning style and resources that are aligned with your preferred learning style leads to a better learning is not supported by evidence. And in fact, getting a mix of different types of resources, multimodality, kinesthetic, visual, auditory, verbal, different types of learning actually leads to better learning, according to the evidence, I believe. 8, I believe this is all learning requires previous learning. That might be wrong as far as 8, but that's one of them. 9, no, we're getting stuck again. 9, there's no known limit to how much we can learn if we use elaboration or when using elaboration. 10, oh shoot, there's a big picture, like the more detailed and the bigger picture worldview or map of knowledge you have pertaining to a given subject, meaning the more information you already know that you can connect new information to, the more effective and efficient learning is. 11 is mastery. Mastery can be thought of as or be identified when someone is able to, or someone or you, when you identify the underlying principles and patterns of a resource or subject or skill and develop a mental model from those underlying principles, and then connect that mental model to another mental model. That's kind of like characteristic of mastery. So 12, oh, we're so close. 12, this is not 12, but it's one of them, is learning physically changes the brain and that we can become smarter. 13, we're missing 2. What two could we possibly be missing? The skill one, the no loan limit. There's 2 are missing. Here it is. This was supposed to be 8, I think. The ability to discriminate between 2 things and determine and see the underlying principles that differs, that makes 2 things or distinguishes 2 things from each other, is a skill that can be trained by interleaved and varied practice, and that skill leads to a greater ability to further discriminate against related things in novel situations. Still vague. That one's a little vague, but what's the final one? Underlying principles, we already did that. There was another one about underlying principles. Yep, we just said that, 2 of them. And then the mastery models. Shoot, there's one more. Testing. Yes. No, was that one of them? We're all susceptible. We're all susceptible. This might be it. We're all susceptible to misjudging our abilities, whether thinking we have stronger abilities or weaker abilities than they really are, and that practice testing helps to calibrate our analysis or understanding of our own abilities. Wow, we did it. We did it. Let's go. What is the central argument for make it stick? Learning is an acquired skill, and the most effective learning techniques are often counterintuitive. Most effective, I think we could say the most effective techniques according to science and according to evidence. So I'm going to say that was hard. Didn't get that part. And then what is Make It Stick, a book in a few words, and what are the 8 chapters? What does Make It Stick about? Make It Stick about in a few words. It's basically a book on learning science and modern learning techniques based in evidence. Okay. And then the 8 chapters are learning is misunderstood, to learn, retrieve. Oh shoot, space and varied practice, embrace difficulties, increase abilities, get beyond learning styles. No, embrace difficulties. Yeah. All right. And then make it stick. That's 7. We're missing. That's 6. Okay, hold on. To learn, retrieve. No. Learning is misunderstood. To learn, retrieve. Space and varied practice. Embrace difficulties. Get beyond learning styles. Increase your abilities. Make it stick. We're missing 1. All right, what is it? Mix up your practice was 3. Embrace difficulties. Avoid illusions of knowing. All right, hold on. Well, here we go. I'm just going to edit that about. Okay, here we go. One more time. Learning is misunderstood. To learn, retrieve. Mix up your practice. Embrace difficulties. Avoid illusions of knowing. Increase your abilities, make it stick. Learning is misunderstood. To learn, retrieve. Mix up your practice. Embrace difficulties. Avoid illusions of knowing. Get beyond learning styles. Increase your abilities, make it stick. Is that right? Yeah. There we go. Oh, shoot. No, we didn't get that one right at first, so. Shoot. We would have seen it again in 16 days, but I missed it, so. Now we'll see it in 1 day. Unfortunately, or fortunately. Unfortunately. All right. There's the first 10 minutes to get through Anki, like I said. That's typical. Okay, what did we read yesterday? We finished the section, the subsection called People Misunderstand Learning. Were we talking about the simulator being pretty effective? Simulator was pretty effective. Oh, some instructions, some teachers, some schools, some institutions have discovered, they've discovered or stumbled upon very effective learning techniques, but that's actually far and few. And what is much more common is that this fire hose method of teaching, where you just spray people with exposure, tons of slides, tons of words, tons of reading and stuff. None of it really sticks. It's pretty ineffective. That's much more common. Fire hose method of just information overload. Okay? I'm gonna have to check. I can't tell you what it was. Yeah, exposure. Exposure does not lead to that penny test, right? The penny test of like, if exposure really was effective at, you just see something enough times it gets burned in your memory, well then people would all be able to pass this test online where you get 12 images of a penny and you have to choose the correct one and the rest are not actual what the penny looks like, and most people don't get it right. So that shows that exposure doesn't work and doesn't just burn it into memory if you've been exposed to something enough times. Okay, we were right with this simulator. Did we read something before that? No? Okay. Let me think now. If that was right. Simulator, the penny exposure thing. Even advice we get about learning from like credible sources like Dartmouth University, George Mason, other universities, if you look them up, at least when this book is written online, they would say, practice, like just repeat, I would say. Repeat. If you repeat it enough, it's going to just burn into memory, which not when you mass practice, not these types of things. Like, you need to space the practice. You need to interleave the practice. But that's a very common thing, is just repeat. Reread, read it again, repeat the words. Not very effective. Okay. And they also give advice of like, if you intend to learn something, intend to learn it, then it will, most likely you will remember it or learn it. Which I think there's some truth to, but I think it's outside of the scope potentially of this book. That's more of like priming your attention and your motivation and stuff, and this is just like strictly learning technique, so that's not really a learning technique. I don't know. I think there's probably some truth to intending to learn something leading to more learning. I just don't know how it wouldn't. But maybe intending to learn something is different than just saying I intend to learn this. It's like a feeling, it's an action, it's like a state, maybe like the actual thing, other than just a word of like I intend to. Anyway, where are we at? Yeah, I think we got most of it. The simulator is so good because it's like training the mental processes and structures that will be actually used in an actual flight, like a simulator. It's also spacing practice of different things. It's interleaving practice. It's retrieval. It's all retrieval. You're actually actively doing something. So that's good. And then I kind of just threw in the idea of like working versus long-term memory with that repeat. Like if you keep repeating something, it's going to stay in your memory, in your working memory, but it doesn't necessarily get transferred to long-term memory. And that book, yeah, I don't think this book talks much about working memory versus long-term memory, but in another course I took in another book, Learning How to Learn and A Mind for Numbers, that's a big central topic of that course and book, is the working memory versus the long-term memory. Okay, so now we're going to start into this next subsection of empirical data or empirical evidence versus lower theory and intuition. And it's called early evidence, and this is only about 2 pages. So maybe I'll read half of it, elaborate, and then I'll read the other half and elaborate. Let's do it and retrieve and recall. Okay, let's do it. Okay, so I just read only one paragraph actually, and that's because it was, I think, pretty important. It was about basically this Tolving, this Professor Tolving or researcher with the last name Tolving in the 1960s ran an experiment where basically participants read, from my understanding, participants read 6 pairs of words. So they would read, the example was chair, and then I think 9. So I'm assuming it's a chair, whatever, running, or chair 9, and then it's basketball, and the pair is some random, it. And it's just like random pairs of words, and they have them read them. So 12 words in total, 6 words, or 6 pairs. And the first word in each pair is a noun. Okay? And so they had 2 groups of people, both read this sheet of paper. And then after that, Tolving, or the researcher, whoever was conducting the actual experiment, maybe Tolving, was like, now we're going to give you a list of 6 pairs of words, but we want you to, you're going to be tested on them this time. And so they gave one group 6 pairs of words, 12 words total, but this group, all the nouns, which were the first word in each pair, were the same as the ones they originally read. And the other group, the nouns were completely different. And surprisingly, the research found that there was no difference in test performance and learning between the group that had the same nouns as the one they had already previously read, so this was the second time they read them, and this group that did not have, or had different words. And kind of the point the authors are attempting to make here is that exposure has no effect on learning. But I'll say that exposure in this sense means passive, yeah, it's completely passive. Like, you're just reading words that have no connection, and you're not intending to learn them, or you're not even thinking you're going to get tested on. You're just like, read these words. Okay, I read them. Right? So what is considered exposure? This is a question I posed at the beginning of the chapter, and I'm going to answer that, I think, right now, at least to the best of my ability, and that is, exposure is passive sensory input or passive reading. Passive sensory information or passive reading. That's all I'll say for now, because like active reading, like recall, that's not exposure. It's kind of vague. Is exposure worthless for learning? It seems so. If by exposure you are referring to, and then it's passive sensory information or passive reading. Okay, so those are questions I actually had to I had posed at the beginning, and so here I'm actually gonna like just put little Tolving 1960 experiment, because that's really where they're drawing this from mostly. They then at the end of the paragraph say there's been more further research that has further develop this idea that exposure does not lead to any significant learning at all. And yeah, hopefully they do go into those experiments, because I'd love to read them, because I don't think that this one study is really enough. It's hard to say, because these random words, there's really no meaning behind them. That's probably why they did the test on it, but exposure to random things, I think that, yeah, that kind of ties into that intention. I'm like, that, well, once they knew they were going to be tested on, they read it differently. They were intending to learn it. So, okay, let's keep going. All right, so my timer went off. I finished this paragraph, and let's finish talking about it. Let's retrieve it. So this final paragraph that I read is about this 2008 series of experiments and synthesis of research on rereading done at Washington University. And there were basically 3 findings. So the first kind of finding is that you have one group of people that read the text once, and one group of people that reads text once. So they read it twice. They read it and then reread it once. This group just reads it once. If both immediately are tested on the material, the one that read it twice will slightly outperform the first group. Okay? Reasonable. The big finding there is that on a delayed test, where now these both groups then take the test again later on, maybe a week later, and get specific, they both performed the same. So that the gained benefits of rereading the text did not last. They were short-lived. That was a big finding. Also, it's a big finding that rereading it did slightly lead to modest benefits in the moment. Okay, and then another type of rereading is there's a group that reads it, okay? Then this group doesn't read it again. This group reads it again a couple days later. So there's a big space in between, or there's a spacing in between the first and second time they read it. This group does perform better than this group that didn't reread it. And I think that's kind of simple. Yeah. That one was pretty simple. Like the group that reread the material a couple days later performed better. I guess it doesn't necessarily it seems kind of obvious, but it could have been not so, but okay. So those are the findings. So today we did Anki. I'm going to try to start doing recaps so I can actually remember what's going on, and also when I'm titling and thumbnailing, I could potentially just come to the end of the video and get the recap for what I did. We did Anki. Finally got that 14 claims correct. We reviewed yesterday's material about the simulator, the fire hose effect, or the fire hose teaching method, common advice that's misleading about learning or just incorrect. And then we started reading early evidence, and we went over the Tolving 1960 experiment and the 2008 Washington University experiment. Exposure experiment from Tolving and rereading from Washington. Okay. That's it for today. All right, bye.